I'm a mother raising a daughter in kindergarten. Because both my husband and I work. I go to work in the mornings and pick up my daughter from school, then work remotely at home for the company. This weekend, the three of us are going on a picnic where I want to introduce my daughter to someone special. The place we're going to is a nursing home, which is located in a quiet place with fresh air. It's a place where many elderly people with Alzheimer's disease or physical limitations are cared for, as they do not have families to provide for them. A very special person to us is there. It's my husband's grandma. She suffered a stroke, and after some treatment, she ended up at a nursing home. When we got married, she began living with us until I got pregnant. But as soon as our grandma heard that I got pregnant, she asked us to send her to a nursing home. She said it would be better for her there, so that she would have friends to talk with. But my husband and I knew that she was only saying that because she didn't want to burden me, who was pregnant. Honestly, it didn't, because our grandma was very special to us. So, I told her not to go because I couldn't live apart from her, but she insisted, even threatening that she would just sneak out at night if we don't let her go. Eventually, my husband and I discussed the matter and put our grandma in a nursing home. I truly visited her often, but after I gave birth to my daughter, we couldn't visit her together. Each one of us had to stay at home to care for our baby. But since now that our daughter is in kindergarten, we decided to take her to see her great-grandma. Grandma was happy to hear that we were bringing her great-granddaughter whom she only saw in pictures. I have to see my great-granddaughter before I die. Lately, her health hasn't been well. People told me that it would be hard for me to live with my grandmother-in-law when we were just newlyweds, but that wasn't the case at all. As I said earlier, she's a very special person to us. I met my husband in the first year I entered college. At that time, I joined a club as a freshman and went to its welcoming party. I met my husband there, who was a sergeant in the army on leave. Even though he was older than me, he also was a freshman because he joined the military before he finished his first-year semester. When we met, he had to return to his base after his leave was over. As a freshman, I was having a hectic time. My husband and I met again right after he was discharged. It was when our club members went to the Seniors' Day Center to volunteer. When our volunteer work was finished, the family members of the elderly people came to take their parents one by one in the evening. Everyone left except one. It was an elderly man wearing an old jumper. When everyone left, he slowly got up and started to leave the center. I felt terrible to watch his lonely-looking stooped back, so I chased after him. "Oh, Chains. Grandpa, I will go with you. Where do you live?" He was worried that he was taking up my time since I must be busy as a college student. At that moment, I felt I could understand his feelings. I knew that he wanted my company. "Don't worry. Go with me today," I said. Then he smiled and pointed. I have to go up that way for some distance. He told me where he lived. While walking, we had a chat just as if we were really related as grandpa and granddaughter. He told me that right now was the best time of my life and to enjoy it. After some walk, the place he stopped was a small studio behind a house with a small door. It was just one room with a kitchen attached and a tiny bathroom. I knew that the elderly folks at the Seniors' Day Center were living in poverty, but when I witnessed it with my own eyes, I felt sadder. I was about to leave when someone called my name. When I turned around, the old woman I had met at the Seniors' Day Center was standing there with a young guy. That was my current husband. "Oh, are you going with your grandson today too? Have you eaten?" Grandpa greeted her warmly, and my current husband nodded. My husband and I talked while Grandpa and Grandma were talking. After that date, I visited the Seniors' Day Center often and became closer with Grandpa more than before. Since he was friendly with Grandma, I became naturally more acquainted with my husband. I took Grandpa home every day, and because Grandma lived nearby, I encountered my husband often. As a result, we became interested in each other, and eventually it developed into a relationship. When we told them that we were dating, they were very happy for us. Then, not too long after, I got invited to Grandma's house. Even though we knew each other well, I got nervous for some reason that day. Grandma was healthier at that time, unlike now. She even prepared food by herself, making rib stew, which was my favorite food. My husband and his grandma lived in a 2-bedroom house similar to Grandpa's studio, with an open kitchen attached to the living room with a bathroom. This section, in comparison, it was better than Grandpa's studio, but it was by no means a good one. I never asked my husband about his family. Just seeing him living only with his grandma, I could fathom that his childhood wasn't so great. I decided to wait until he told me. Nevertheless, we fell in love, and while we were dating, I realized that Grandpa had feelings for Grandma. Grandpa wasn't in a good financial shape, but would always take something delicious to Grandma and even had me give flowers to her on his behalf, like a shy boy. Thus, when Grandma received the flowers, she became embarrassed, but she caringly put the flowers in a vase. They couldn't be labeled as dating, but to them, such relationships seemed enough. Unlike the hot romance of young people, it was a comfortable relationship with a little bit of excitement. My husband and I, who were college students at the time, were thinking about getting married if we got employed after graduation. Because my husband served in the military, we were able to graduate together. After graduating, I got a job first, and a few months later, my husband also found a job. And so with marriage in mind, I introduced my husband to my parents. We planned on working hard to save money for our wedding, and I wanted everyone to know about it. After about a year, I got a call late at night. I wondered who would call me at such late hours and answered the phone. "Is this Susan Little?" I said I was. Then the voice said, "I'm sorry to call you late. I'm calling from the police station. Mr. Edwards has just passed away. He has no next of kin, and on the phone, only your name was in the directory. Exmo and calling you." That when the police said that Grandpa had passed away, I was shocked that it chased all my sleep away. Grandpa had passed away, I was shocked that it chased all my sleep away. I rushed to put on any clothes and ran to catch a taxi. It was so sudden that I couldn't even cry, and my mind went blank. That's when they arrived in front of the grandpa's studio. 2 policemen and my husband were standing there. He was in his pajamas, as if he came out of bed. I ran to my husband and asked what was going on, and he hugged me and said, "I think Grandpa had an illness. There was a medical report in the room and he had a heart problem. He's been under treatment, but when the police checked with the hospital, he didn't continue and just tried to bear with it. A neighbor found him passed out in front of his house and reported it, but he was already dead." I was speechless at such sudden death that just tears came out. I blamed myself for not paying closer attention to him. Grandpa had already been taken to the morgue. He had no children. In the end, the funeral was held by Senior, Stay Center, and me. But throughout the funeral, Grandma cried a lot. It's natural one dies when one gets old, but why didn't he say that he was sick? Sick? How could he leave me without giving me time to prepare like this? She sat by his coffin during the wake and lamented, which was so heartbreaking to watch. My heart was also heavy because she had treated me like her own granddaughter after we met at the center. After the funeral, we left Grandpa's ashes at the ossuary and returned to his place to clean out Grandpa's stuff. As his place was small, there weren't many things. In his refrigerator, there were only bottles of water and cheese. Some canned soups were piled on one side of the shelf. His clothes were only 5 sets, and he had nothing except for some books. It was heartbreaking to see that. I thought that life was too fleeting. A few months after Grandpa passed away, my husband proposed to me. That's how we started to prepare for our wedding, and in the process, I heard about my husband's family. My husband said both of my parents passed away in a car accident. My father's brother and sister tried to send me to an orphanage, but my grandma refused and said that she would raise me. So, from the age of 10, I lived with my grandma in the house we are living now. Both of them died in a car accident. And my aunt and uncle are abroad, but to this day, there's no contact. My husband spoke without any feelings, but that made me feel sorrier for him. Don't let Grandma know you know the story, because if she knows that you know, it would make her sad. Now, I have you and your parents who care for me, but for my grandma, she only has me. I don't want her to get sad because of me. I told my husband I would do as he asked. Our wedding preparations were proceeding smoothly, but abruptly got interrupted right after both sides of the family met because Grandma suddenly collapsed. I was at work when I got the call. My husband couldn't be reached at work as he was out of the office, so I got the call, since I was listed as granddaughter-in-law on the call history. As soon as I answered the phone, I rushed to the hospital. Grandma was already in the intensive care unit. Her doctor said Grandma had a stroke. Even if she becomes conscious, she wouldn't be able to move and she would need someone to look after her. My husband came after he got the call late, crying and staying in front of the intensive care unit. even though he knew he couldn't see his grandma because it wasn't the visitors' hours. He couldn't leave. She was my husband's only family. I told my husband what I had heard from the doctor. Fortunately, my husband worked at a pretty solid company that he didn't need to worry about hospital bills. He also had insurance for the cost of nursing care and treatment. I could also get state subsidies. The problem was our wedding. When my grandmother-in-law collapsed, people around me tried to talk me out of getting married, especially my close friends. Your fiancé is still very attached to his grandmother, so would he ask a caregiver to take care of her? Obviously, if you get married, he will make you take care of his grandma. At first, he would say he will help and ask you to take care of her together, but I assure you that it won't last a month before he will ask you to quit your job and take care of his grandma at home. Husbands are like that, so you better think early and don't get married. Because everyone was thinking of me, I couldn't ignore them altogether. In fact, in a real situation like mine, it usually falls on women when taking care of a sick elderly family member. My parents even asked me about postponing the wedding. They had no bad intentions, but in consideration of me. However, I never thought of delaying or canceling our wedding at all. It was not only for his grandma, but also for my husband. I didn't want my husband to be alone in dealing with difficult times. So, I told my husband I was thinking of quitting my job if necessary. He wept, saying he was sorry. When his grandma heard about me, she cried, apologizing for burdening us when she should have died right away. When I saw her that way, it upset me because it was not a sin to be sick. Grandma, what do you mean? Would you leave him alone in the hospital if your grandson got sick? We are a family, so why should you be sorry? Even if you weren't sick, we had plans on having you live with us. Nothing has changed, so receive the treatment and only think about getting well. We can't live without you, Grandma, okay? I will get a pretty dress for you to wear at our wedding, so you must attend looking great, promise? That's what I said, but it wasn't that I wasn't worried. Normally, my husband could afford the medical bills with his income, but because of added expenses of our marriage ahead, the burden was great. First of all, I decided to re-budget, starting with my wedding dress to our newlywed home as we needed to get everything cheaper. We also delayed our wedding date. I got a call. It was from a staff member from the Senior State Center, where our grandma used to attend. I thought it was due to a wedding invitation we sent to some people who were close with our grandma. But it wasn't. Could you come by our center? There's someone who wants to meet you. Susan, I don't know the person, but I heard he's an attorney. I'd never been near any attorneys in my life, but when I heard that an attorney came asking for me, I suddenly got scared as if I did something wrong. After work, I went to the center in time for the appointment. When I entered the center, the staff greeted me and asked about our grandma and how she was. I said she had gotten a lot better. Inquired where the attorney was, and she said he was waiting in the counseling office. I followed the staff into the counseling office to find a middle-aged man sharply dressed in a suit waiting for me. He looked at me smiling and said hello, but I was nervous and just waited for what he had to say. As soon as I sat down, I asked why he came to see me when I did nothing wrong. I asked why he came to the center. Then the attorney smiled and said, "Please don't worry, it's not anything bad. Rather the opposite. I'm here to tell you the good news. Susan, I heard you're getting married soon, right?" I answered yes. He's hearing my answer. The attorney took out a few documents and opened them one by one and explained. "I'm an attorney representing Mr. Edwards, who passed away a few months ago. Mr. Edwards left all his assets, including an apartment, to you." Susan, I was so stunned that I thought I would faint. I just couldn't believe that Grandpa, who subsisted on canned soup in a one-room studio, had this amount of fortune and left it to me, who's a total stranger, who's not related to him. I told the attorney that there must be a mistake. I told him I had no reason to inherit anything. "You must be shocked. Mr. Edwards knew you might and left you a letter." The attorney handed me a piece of paper. It was a letter in neat handwriting. "Susan, by the time you get this letter, I will no longer be in this world. You must be preparing for your wedding with Frank. The reason I'm writing this letter is because I think my days in this world are coming up. When I was young, I made a lot of money in my business, and I had the joy of success, but I couldn't keep my family because I was too immersed in my success. My son died young from an illness, and my wife also left me after our son died, since our son was our only tie between her and me. But when it disappeared, my wife accused me of being a workaholic who ignored our son even when he was sick, and she cried a lot. After that, I folded my business and went into hiding to a place where no one knew me. At first, I wanted to kill myself, so I left home, leaving a will. But I couldn't take my life because I didn't even deserve to die. After I died, I was afraid to meet my son in heaven, who'd blame me. So, I went into hiding in an unfamiliar slum section. Susan, you have been a granddaughter who has shown kindness to me, who is undeserving. I can't forget you, who ran around on my behalf to act as my Cupid between Frank's grandma and me to deliver gifts. Although I'm a great sinner, I'm so glad that there is one thing that I could do for you. I hope you will use what I've accrued so far and my apartment to be helpful for your marriage. Susan, please have a good life living together with Frank's grandma." As I was reading the letter, I didn't realize my tears were dropping. I didn't deserve to be thanked by him because I didn't think I did much for him. I didn't even realize that Grandpa was sick. I knew he lived in poverty, but I didn't go see him often with excuses that I was too busy. So how could I accept his gift and get the inheritance? I told the attorney that I couldn't accept it, but the attorney said, "Mr. Edwards came to see me a few weeks before he died. At that time, he told me this. When he was very successful, he had a lot of people around him, but after he left his home and went around looking like a pauper, no one even gave him any greetings. Susan, you were the first person to be friendly and asked how he was and even took him home. He said that for a young lady to worry about an old man, he was so grateful and thought you were so beautiful. Susan, do you know what is the best kindness a person can do for another? It's talking to a person who is lonely. Just a casual word is hope and happiness to an old person. Therefore, Susan, you do deserve to get Mr. Edwards' inheritance, more than enough. Please, it's Mr. Edwards' last wish, so please accept it. The attorney left after handing me Grandpa's bank book and the title of the apartment with the power of attorney signed, designating them over to my name. It's that night when my husband and Grandma heard that Grandpa had left me inheritance. They were just as stunned as I was. Grandma smiled, saying he had a knack of coming up with surprises, looking misty. Soon after, we moved into Grandpa's apartment and left in the wealthy suburbs. In Grandma's room, we put in an expensive state-of-the-art medical bed. We purchased it with the money Grandpa gave me. After that, we continued to live with our Grandma. Thanks to the money left by Grandpa, we were able to take care of our Grandma by hiring a nurse, although she is now in a nursing home. I still talk a lot about Grandpa with our Grandma. We all miss him very much. Our Grandma says often, I will follow him soon, so when I see him there, I plan on smacking him on his back. We are in a situation where we have to prepare to say farewell to our Grandma, but my husband and I plan on doing our absolute best to take care of her until her last day. It's also Grandpa's wish. We want to make the most of our remaining time, so we won't have any regrets. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope your day is filled with hope. Please support me and share your words of wisdom in the comment section. Liking and subscribing would be a great help to me. Have a great day.